here we are.
Here we are.
Ashley Thompson, how are you?
I'm good. I'm especially good because I'm sitting here talking to you.
Yes, we're winning. We're both are winning. So glad for you to come and join us here at the table and Thinker Networks. I have so you have been on the other side of this.
Yep.
Or I should say I have been on the other side of this before. You are well. Why don't you tell us what it is that you do?
I'm one of the hosts of Keloland Living. It's a lifestyle TV show on every day, Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. on Keloland TV.
Yeah, so you get access to the people every day. And I have been on several times and for various things, some about me, some about social justice and things that are going on, which is one of the things that I want to talk to you about today. We'll get into that a little bit because I think it's really impressive, some of the things that you've been doing and young media, as I call it, in general. So,
Wait, are you counting me in young media?
yes, of course.
Sweet.
Of course.
I'm in.
So in fact, I wouldn't say on record who I was considering to be old media, but
It's just not me. That's all I care about.
Right, but I think you get my drift. But how do you come to this point? How do you find yourself 2 o'clock every day talking about lifestyle subjects? Of
Like,
all types?
how did I get here?
Yeah, how did you get here?
I don't know. I have no
That's
idea.
a good story. Man.
I am lucky to have been in the right place at the right time on a variety of occasions. And I think that, well, I got a French degree in college
Okay.
and I didn't become French when I graduated.
Weird.
Right.
Weird.
So then you're thinking, what do I do now?
Right.
Right. I also did political science and I thought I'd go to law school, but I just started doing things I liked. And I started doing community development for Citibank and getting to know a lot of community organizations and getting to see what kind of an impact a person can have.
Yes.
Then I started wanting to be on what I think is the harder side, the asking side,
Mhm.
asking for money. And I worked in development, nonprofit development for a while. And, a few things changed here and there. And one day the GM at Kello said, "Hey, have you ever thought about coming to work at Kello?" And I said, "No, but I'll tell you one thing. When the GM of a TV station asks you if you've ever thought about it, you think about it then."
Well, for sure.
And I said, "I'll definitely look at that." And so I did.
You gotta give me a little more context though, like because it sounds like I was walking through the mall and
I was walking
someone
in the
asked
mall
me
and
if I wanted
I
to
got
model.
discovered.
Yeah, it kind of has that vibe to it.
I think that really it all comes down to having been in the community for a while and really doing my best to be the kind of person other people want to help.
Mm.
So I always try to do my best to show up when someone asks me to and do what I can when someone needs me. And that helps you develop a really great network of people. So I knew the GM of Kello J. Huizinga. I mean, a lot of shared friends and a good network. So I wasn't just somebody in the mall that got
Okay.
discovered. I was a known quantity in this group of people, but really just never having had the thought of going down this path, but more so just wanting to be, like I said, the kind of person other people want to help.
Well, I love that phrase. Let's go down that road. Just because that's something that I don't think people think about. Somebody that people want to help. Just like the idea of, I tell the story a lot that I had a person that worked for me one time or reported to me. Let me rephrase that. And the person came in one time and they were frustrated and they said, no one likes me. And I said, well, I don't think that's true. And she said, yep, no one likes me. And eventually I asked, I said, well, okay, well, what have you done to be likable? And the thought had not really crossed her mind that was a part of the equation. And sometimes when we think about things, we think about being helped, we think about being liked, we think about being respected. And sometimes we don't necessarily think as much about being a person that people want to help, being a person that people like, or being somebody that people are drawn to respect. So when you think of that type of thing, what does make you the type of person? Let's dig a little bit deeper into that. What makes you the type of person that people want to help, and why do you think that's important?
I think the biggest lesson I learned early on about being the kind of person that people want to help, I worked with this guy, Jerry Noctegal. He's no longer with us, but a lot of the community members know him. And he really demonstrated this. And it's the mentality that when you can show up, you show up.
Mm.
Maybe it doesn't work that great for me to stop by an event on my way home. Maybe it's hard to read an extra book to learn something about somebody. Maybe it's not my comfort zone, but going the extra, not mile, but maybe block for
Mm-hmm.
people, it's not that hard and people remember it.
Yeah.
So I think just showing up when you can show up, helping someone when you can, learning when you can. And then I would say that's evolved over time. And now I'm probably even like most proud of myself in that sense, in how wrong I've been in the past and
Mm.
how I'm like really excited that I can say that and that I'm going to do my best to change. And on a variety of subjects, we talk about social justice and caste and all of the things that
Mm-hmm.
I can easily say, like, hey, that was a time I was wrong. And I'm like proud of that.
Mm.
And I think that willingness to just totally be wrong and learn something new is something that helps anybody around me probably want to talk to me more, right?
Yeah.
Because there's maybe something they want to talk about that nobody's listening to them about.
Yeah. That's a good point. And I love how you talked about how you can be at a healthy place right now where you can talk about some of the things that you were wrong about. But it is hard to get on that journey, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. So as you have been on that journey where you learned things about yourself and things where you were not on it
Mhm.
or aware, what took you on that journey? What got you thinking about those type of things?
Well, that's where, in a lot of ways, I'm so fortunate to do what I do and to be able to think critically about issues in the world and see things happening in front of me and not just let them happen in front of me, but think, okay, who should I talk to about this? What do I need to know? And I think it's really intimidating to walk up to somebody. One of my first interviews I did on race issues of any kind was with Mark Blackburn.
Mm.
And I said, I just want to ask you stupid white girl questions. And I'm just going to say that, like things I've never been comfortable asking because I don't think they're appropriate, or
Right.
somehow that was what we learned, right? Just ignore race and then
Yeah.
you won't be racist if you just don't see it. And so I got to just call him and say, hey, I want to have an interview with you and I want to say things like, do you want me to call you Black or African American? Or what are the right words? What are the
Mhm.
right terms? Or what do you think when someone's response to Black Lives Matter is all lives matter? I wanted to ask those questions. Now, anybody in their normal lives walking down the street probably feels really intimidated about that in
Right,
general.
right.
And I had the ability to say, this is my job.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a nice cushion too, where I can say, like,
For
I
sure.
want to do this and I want to learn about it. And it's something we need to talk about on TV. And that gave me a little bit of a context probably to go forward with that. But that's a lot of where I've gone from there, is just seeing things and getting to talk to people and being comfortable just asking questions that I would have thought were a little too bold before.
Right.
And then getting into, obviously, reading and educating myself. But it really started with just being able to ask people questions that I didn't necessarily think were appropriate before that.
So what's your advice to someone who doesn't work in the news?
Well, I learned this from some of these conversations, but the first step is definitely educating yourself with the plethora of books that are out there that really, or movies or whatever the way that
Mhm.
you like to learn information is. I particularly love to read. It's hard to read some of this information without just, I mean, it's mind blowing and it makes you kind of mad, and then I don't know what to do with it, and then I'm really angry, but I kind of have to deal with that on my own because it's nobody else's problem at that point,
For
right?
sure.
So that's really where it's at, is just doing your own reading and getting a circle of maybe people. I've got some great friends that are very similar to me,
Yeah.
white, middle-aged moms who want to do better, who can read these books on our own and talk about them and be like, okay, did you see that, without putting it on the Black community to teach us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what makes you want to do better? I mean, you don't have to.
Oh, I didn't really, I mean, I I've never considered that.
Yeah, I mean, most people don't, you know, but there's a lot of folks, who, if it can't happen to them, it can't happen. And so it's hard to believe things because then, they don't have access to that or exposure to that. And I think sometimes when you're on that journey of righting wrongs, it is hard to have empathy for folks in some cases. Either way,
Hmm.
largely because you can't understand the experience. For people of color or any disenfranchised group, it seems so obvious. To treat somebody like a human, to be respectful, to understand all of the different subtleties of coded language and unconscious. But it seems so obvious, right? Um, and then for other people, it seems um, equally as obvious that you figure your own stuff out. I had to figure my stuff out, right? And so for some people, it's very difficult for them to get to a point where they can really develop empathy for anyone on either part of it. I don't say side of it really anymore because
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
think
that's
you
good.
know um,
Well, I think it's been a real journey for me. Like that's very up and down in that I went from being fairly ignorant about it to
hmm
no, really nobody's. I'm not, this isn't a, I don't think that because I didn't know about it or because I am privileged that that is in any way my fault or I did it intentionally, right? These
right,
aren't
right,
words
right.
that are negative, but I was ignorant about a lot of issues. That wasn't taught to me that way. I hadn't done the work to learn. And so I went from that to just immersing myself in as much information as I could to being sort of confused about why everybody didn't think that way, right? Like, I mean, I think I talked to you early on where I was like, I don't even know how to talk to somebody who doesn't think that racism is a bad thing, right?
Right.
I was like, I don't, just like mind blown. I'm like, I went all in. And then I had to have my own experiences in groups of people where they're they hadn't yet had that influence in their lives to make a change, and
Mm.
good people, good people,
Right.
good people doing good work and amazing things in our community too. And they just hasn't clicked with them yet. I don't think there's anything necessarily there that's wrong or bad. It just hasn't clicked, right? And I had to sit in those situations and watch and see how easy it is to be in a group of people that are like-minded
Mm.
and in a group of people where there's a lot of influence and in work situations where you don't have very much diversity of thought. And I had to sit there and think, how hard would it be to get there on your own if you never hear this
It's
information?
pretty tough.
And so that helped rein in my frustration a little bit, right? And start to see it a little bit more like I'm going to do my best to learn as much as I can and influence a small circle of people around me in hopes that they also influence a small circle of people around them and that just continues to grow without the rage that I can't change the world.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not very useful. And like we said, hate kills the carrier. So all of that energy eats you up. So I don't want to talk about just this because you are more things and you do more things. But one of the things that's been pronounced about you lately, in particular, is your desire to do these type of stories and continue this conversation. And I see it from others as well in our news world. A lot of our younger people in these organizations want to be a part of telling these stories in a more robust way. But you in particular, I know, has worked hard to go beyond the Black History Month content. There's always the kind of obligatory stories that you do on Martin Luther King visiting here, or Rosa Parks and those type of things. George Washington Carver, Harriet Tubman, all that type of stuff. I sound exhausted when I say that because
Because you
I
are.
am. And so they rarely go beyond that dynamic. We'll play the couple pieces of the I Have a Dream speech, some marching, and then we move on and then we'll revisit it next year. But one of the things that I've seen you do is put a real focus on having deeper conversations more frequently. And I know that that's not always a thing to do on television because a lot of people treat it as an escape and they don't actually want to have to confront some of these conversations, particularly 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a lifestyle show. So what drives you to do that? Um, when you can just make good television?
Well, I think it is good television when you have these conversations.
I like it.
Um, with as many people that are watching, with all of those people, somebody's hearing it for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So the more you can talk about real issues and get perspective from a diverse group of guests, the more an audience of people is going to hear little things here and there that are going to maybe set in later, maybe set in right now, maybe influence them to read a specific book that you're talking about of issues. Or, I don't think I'm going to necessarily, I'm not out there to change the minds of somebody whose views are deeply rooted in something. But I think just like me, I was the person who just hadn't thought of it before.
Right.
And someone had to say something in front of me for me to think, oh, I'd like to learn more about that. And I think the more that we talk about some of these things that can be kind of challenging to talk about and confront even for yourself,
Right.
The more I learn, I get access to all this great information and fantastic people. And it just brings more information out
But
there.
there's a real pressure to that, though. You know what I mean? Because your competitors may not necessarily be telling those stories. And if a person can click and watch, a cat and tree story or, something that's lighter versus having to deal with things in their mind or their heart that they don't want to have to deal with, there's a real potential outcome to that, that affects the bottom line of sorts. So how do you cook that up? And even maybe even speak to the perspective of the station. I don't know what it's like behind the scenes, but for a lot of people, it's interesting that I think this is so funny because you hear this sometimes where people will say, oh my God, we've heard about this so much, right? And really what they'll be talking about is maybe the fourth or fifth segment over the span of 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And for most organizations, if we were to take all of the coverage, all of it, that was on people of color in these particular issues, we might be talking about 20 hours annually, And when you think of hundreds of years of, backstory here, of real human intrigue and serious consequences and scar tissue and all those other type of things. The idea that 20 hours is too much is so strange to me, especially in a world where people are wondering why we're still talking about it.
Well, I mean, you haven't dealt with too much racism in your life yet, have you?
Oh, me?
Right? I mean, right. That's kind of, and that's not directed at any particular person, but when someone says something like, well, have we done, like, haven't you, if someone came up to me on the street and said, haven't you done too many topics on race? I'm like, right, that's our hardship. We've had 5 segments on blah, blah, blah.
Right.
When Black people everywhere, all people of color have been dealing with a lifetime of issues. So it's not too much.
Right.
We're not talking about anything too much. And
well, I figure we should be able to talk about it for at least as long as slavery happened.
So another 400
by my
years.
count. No, I mean, yeah.
Right.
I'm a move forward person, you know what I mean? So I want to move forward, but there is something that has to be, we can't move forward without having context around what it is that we're talking about right now. We can't have context if we can't have legitimate, honest, open, historical conversations and anecdotal conversations from people in terms of what they're experiencing today. I just think that's important for us to have the context to talk about how we're going to deal with X, Y, or Z.
Well, I mean, I bake a lot of cakes on TV too, and I do a lot of crocheting and crafting. I mean, there's a lot of light content out there, right?
Right.
I mean, there's no lack of fun things to do at 2 p.m. But I also think that when we put content out where we're talking about these issues and these hard things sometimes, I mean, it's important to do, first of all, like that, there's not a question about that.
Right.
I think sometimes it can be something that somebody just wants to cover because it's the trend right now. Everyone's talking about race, so let's talk about race. And one of the things that makes me want to make sure that we're covering these topics is that I'm doing all the work. I'm reading everything I can. I'm learning everything I can to make sure that this is done well, and I'm not just doing it because it's something that everybody's doing right
Mm-hmm.
now. So, that's anybody can do it, I guess. Anybody can talk about it. I think it's even people are talking about things more and more now. And sometimes it is just because it's what's cool to talk about, right? Right? I mean, you know
Right.
what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it is not cool to talk about, but
No, I mean
it's easy to get on the bandwagon.
It's in vogue.
It's in vogue.
Right.
And so it's not like hard to convince people around me that this is something we should talk about.
Right.
But, you obviously hear from time to time things like, well, haven't we done this too much? Or
Mm-hmm.
can't we get back to the light and fluffy stuff?
Right.
I think it's important to talk about, though.
For sure. Absolutely. I mean, like, if we get some of this stuff handled for real, we can spend way more time with light and fluffy stuff.
Right. See, maybe that should be my answer. Like,
Yeah.
I can bake 50 more cakes on TV if we can handle this first.
Right. It won't be nearly as heavy if there's not like a protest or a riot happening.
Right. But I mean,
simultaneously.
I know people go to TV often for, like you said, that sort of escape. But real life, I mean, my like lifestyle show is what we are. And my lifestyle, it does have some crocheting and some crafting and some baking in
For
it.
sure.
But it also has learning and education and
Yeah.
books and culture and people.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be the George Wallace standing on the front of the steps saying, I still won't let black kids into the school, right? Like, don't be on the wrong side of history.
For sure.
Even if you're not sure what you believe yet, try not to be on the wrong side of history.
Which is important when you're in a community that has an appreciation for history. But some people don't go back and look at that and see that people were on the wrong side, And so that's always an interesting conversation. So, like I pointed out earlier, I am a forward thinker. As much as I get emotional about whatever thing, as much as it affects me, I'm a person that can't stay on it too long because I'm about what has to go forward, what we have to do today to set up to tomorrow, and et cetera. What do you feel like needs to happen in media, and what do you feel part that media plays in this conversation? Because even though this is a really big subject when we talk about people in color, in particular African Americans, it's a big topic, but it is still a microcosm of what every group feels in some way, being disenfranchised, not having their story told, not having representation, not being taken seriously, and that their whole identity being defined by tropes or stereotypes or misunderstandings, right? What part do you feel like media has to play in writing that, or do you feel like they have a part in that at all?
Well, they definitely have a part. And here's what's challenging too. I mean, in a community like ours, and this is not necessarily intentional in any way. It's a part of the construct of what society looks like today, but there aren't a lot of people of color in the media.
Right.
Either. To make sure that it's handled well.
Very true.
So I think all of those things are important. I mean, it's kind of like, I have this, I'm going to call it a game that I'm playing where I'm trying to earn a cup of coffee.
Tell us about this.
Okay, I'm trying to earn a cup of coffee, one coffee bean at a time. And I call it a game, not to make light of it at all, but just a competitive person,
right.
Competitive with myself right now, I'm trying to earn this cup of coffee. And there's about 76 beans in a cup of coffee. So I have to earn all 76 of those beans before I can have this cup of coffee. I'll tell you right now, at the pace I'm going, it's going to take me about 4 years.
Okay.
To get a cup of coffee, right? We'll see what happens.
It's going to be a good cup of coffee.
Right, it's going to be a cup of coffee.
Brought to you by Queen City, across the street.
Oh,
Shout
yes,
out.
yeah. Actually, this one wasn't my cup of coffee from that, but it's still good.
No, it's good.
But this is something I do with my associate producer, Daniel, and he is a Native American. He is a person of color. So he's a lot of firsthand knowledge, and he's done a lot of education and work on knowing what he's talking about. And so I get a bean, I earn it. If he decides I've done something that is worth a bean in terms of dismantling systemic racism or, providing the kind of information to people that can
Yeah.
help go there, right? Something significant in his mind. I can lose a bean for anything. And he is the controller of the beans, and he makes all the rules, and I have no say. And people have asked me why I would give him such power over this, right? And I'm like, okay, well, I'm never going to understand personally what it is like to be a person of color, but let's just be real. The rules people make, they change all the time.
Right.
It's never fair. Nothing's fair. So, I mean, and this just in a little tiny, like, sort of version of that.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm doing you get to take the beans away whenever you want.
Right.
And that is actually really helpful because a lot of times the reason I lose a bean is because of some stereotype or trope or something I really didn't connect in my head as being something that is racist, but not even really necessarily my fault. Something that all this education was given to me in this way, and I never realized that something was connected to a race or that something I was saying was really not appropriate. So I'll lose a bean for all those things, right? And it takes a lot more time to earn it. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be able to say, like, here's everything I accomplished over one cup of coffee.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But if that game of sorts could be played across all industries where someone just felt comfortable calling you out every time you did something that you unintentionally did, right? Because I think that a lot of people, and this is media, this is every industry, people just don't know, and I don't know. You just don't realize when you're doing something. I mean, I took a training not that long ago on like workplace harassment, and the image in one of the discrimination topics was like a stoic Indian. And I was like, well, I think that imagery in itself is a stereotype, right? So it just takes a long time to break down all of the things ingrained, and it takes a long time to see them. So that's part of it. It's just part of like calling people out and saying, hey, I know it's not intentional, but this imagery, that word, whatever is happening isn't doing us any favors.
Yeah.
And then, I get to talk to you a lot on our show about a lot of issues, and I get to ask you questions. But even going farther to make sure that it's just diversity of people always, no matter what they're talking about. I mean, we do how many cooking segments? A week or a month? Where's the are we making sure that we have diversity of thought and cultures and everything there at the table for a cooking segment too? Because it's not just about talking about race.
That's a big deal. And that's part of the bigger conversation I think is interesting, right? Because obviously race is one of the most pronounced issues that we have. But when we talk about diversity, it's diversity of all kinds. Now, we generally don't think about white people in that conversation just because in most cases, they were able to bring whatever they brought from the old country, right? So within, quote unquote, white people, it's still, you're Norwegian, you're Dutch, you're German, you're yada, yada, yada. You brought whatever it is. And so there's a diversity of culture in that particular piece of it. But with African Americans or black people in general, our culture is defined by America because that's where we developed it. We weren't able to bring what we brought from the old country. And sometimes our contributions to culture are co-opted and those type of things. And so people don't necessarily know where they originate from. And that's true of a lot of different things. And it's really important to have diversity around those things so people can understand the value that comes from diversity. When you are made to believe that you were born into some form of exceptionalism and that everything good is something that someone of your ilk created or developed, it's easy to be able to ignore the value of everyone else or other things. And so, like you said, it's not about fault, it's about responsibility. I don't think it's anyone's fault that we are where we are. I mean, obviously there are people who play direct parts in that, but I still think it's everyone's responsibility to participate in creating the best environment for a community. So for me, it's not even about, again, we talked about this before, it's not about really doing what's right, it's about doing what's best. I've long since passed needing or even wanting people to do the right thing because it's the right thing. Because there's some people who just have a different worldview than I have. But for me, it's about getting people to focus on doing the best thing. And the best thing for any community is to be diverse. It gives you more eyes. It makes you more available to new and interesting things, to innovate, all those type of things. And so, as we come into this place in the world where the idea of diversity becomes far more broader than race, where it's about disability, it's about the the meals that you make, the language that you speak, how you spend your time. How do you go about trying to consider those things? Because again, that's a heavy lift, especially when it's not always fiscally advantageous.
I mean, slowly, with determination and intentional, right? I mean, just being intentional about it. But I went through a mad part too, but I think especially, maybe I'm being naive, but especially in our community, I think most people that don't think about it or aren't actively being part of dismantling systemic racism or any kind of issue, they just don't know yet. It just hasn't sunk in, or it's not part of their lives yet.
Right.
I think we're going to get there. Like, we're going to look back at some point and see progress.
Right.
And most of the people that don't maybe agree with me totally now, I think the more that you're exposed to issues and the more you're exposed to people and the more you're exposed to cultures, you're going to make progress. So I think you just keep going after it. But it's like one of my favorite, I recently read Cast by Isabel Wilkerson.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorite parts, she says, I think it's important to remember this because people can get really frustrated with talking about privilege, and it's not, I didn't create this system. I didn't do this. I am personally not a racist person, right? So why do I have to fix it, right? And she gives the example of buying an old house, and you move into a really old house, and you didn't build it. You didn't dig the foundation too shallow. You didn't put boards in that were going to fall down later. You didn't design the house, but you live in it now, and you're going to fix it.
Right, because why wouldn't you?
And we live in this house now. And that doesn't mean any of us necessarily personally created it or have any actual, like, I did this racist thing. But we're here now, so we have to fix it.
Right, because why wouldn't you?
Why? Right. And I think that's just, in some ways, inching towards it. And
for sure. I love it. Let's talk about cakes and crocheting a little bit.
Oh, I really like those things.
I mean, so this is an interesting dynamic, right? The idea of, the lifestyle show. Where is that even right now in our current ethos? You know what I mean? Because we got kids that are not watching TV as much. We got young people, van life. They, I can watch whatever I want on demand on YouTube or whatever. What is it even like creating this type of content right now in the world right now? And where do you feel like it's at? And where do you feel like it's going?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
That's right.
I'm going to remember.
I'm
remembering this the next time I interview you.
Yeah, because you offer me softballs, right?
Here is the thing. You can go online and find anything you want anytime you want it.
Mm-hmm.
But what we have that's amazing is the ability to do the kinds of things people want to see and learn about with local people.
Yeah.
And would you rather go on YouTube and learn how to make a cake from some person on YouTube that you have no idea who they are? Or would you rather tune into our show and watch an award-winning pastry chef from our community that you can literally go buy a cake from later?
Right.
Have her teach you how to make a cake. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where the strength of a local lifestyle show lies, is that it's very solution-based. And that can be talking about a hard topic, and it could be how to pack a better suitcase.
Yeah.
But there's solutions to problems in life that people want to see and stories about people that they want to hear. But it's all people that are in our community that can continue to be part of your life outside of the TV set.
Yeah.
You can watch it, and then you can go to their restaurant and eat. You can watch our show and then learn about a new business and go out later that day and be part of that.
Yeah.
And so that's a value that I think isn't going to go away with the ability to have all that media.
I like that answer because I'm really big on us getting used to seeing us. And I think sometimes people are still not used to hearing our own voice or seeing us out there in the world and knowing what we have to offer and what we have to give. And so I love any outlet that puts the camera or lens back on us and gives um, us an opportunity to show, the value that we have. So I think that's a good answer. Let me ask you this. So given that, what is your vision? Where do you, what do you see? Give us 5-year look out.
Oh, well, I'm sure we'll be, probably nationally syndicated.
You get
right? Why not?
I think that's a great idea. I think that's exactly what should happen.
Our show is 3 years old. So we're in our infancy, right? We're toddlers right now.
Right.
So there's a ton of opportunity. We have a great station. Kelo is the largest. It's the largest landmass that any local television station has in the United States. Like we cover the biggest piece of land. We've huge market share. Like the opportunity to be a lifestyle show in that station is a great opportunity because we reach to Montana, Wyoming, Minnesota. We go everywhere. And so I think that as we keep growing, we have more opportunity to go out into other areas of the community too. I mean, a lot of what we've done has been very Sioux Falls oriented because we don't have the capacity to travel a lot and still put on a show. We've done some, and that's been really fun. So I think getting out into the broader area of Keloland more and growing. But even in this short amount of time we've been on, we've seen such immense growth and so many cool things that I think it's just going to be exponential. And we're going to keep talking about good topics.
In the studio or on the road?
Is that, what do you mean, where I want to be?
Yeah.
I really like both.
That's not an option.
Why can't it be an option?
Touche. It can't be an option.
I love being out on the road. I love getting to meet people and getting to be part of different communities and my job is the coolest job ever. I mean, do you know other people?
I don't know about that.
Okay. Sometimes my day is here. I don't know. Want to know what I did a couple days ago? My afternoon, I went to the State Theater to have the experience of someone at the State Theater. To have my wine served to me and my popcorn and recline in the chair and watch a movie for a segment for Kelo, right? Who gets to do that? I've learned to do a biathlon. I snow skied, cross country skied. I learned how to shoot a gun. I learned how to throw an axe. These are cool things.
They are. I dig it. I'm just saying.
But
my job's pretty sweet too.
I know. I also do love in the studio because it is fast paced. We do it as live. You just go. We're not editing things. I don't get to say, hey, I don't like that. Can I start over? And so that's a different environment. There's a different environment out in the road versus in doing something that's like package and doing it in the studio. And I really like them both a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So as a resident, what do you want to see from the community in 5 years?
Hopefully, I don't even know what that is yet because I'd like to think I'm going to grow so much in 5 years that I can't even think of where I'm going to want us to be in 5 years. Like that I'm not even there yet. Like that we're going to grow as humans so fast that I can't even imagine where we're going to be in 5 years.
That's a pro level dodge right there.
I
like it.
From where we are, from where I am right now, I guess like one of the things I'd really like, what I'd really enjoy seeing is just a general shared idea that we can be wrong about things and just move forward and not kind of fight against it.
Yeah.
Just have more conversations and be more open to, hey, you know what? I was wrong about that. Let's change that.
I like it.
Instead of just kind of being maybe stuck.
Okay. One thing that scares you about the future, one thing that gives you hope.
I'm scared currently from the extremism on all sides of everything. It seems like instead of just having a little divide on a lot of fronts on both sides of everything, there's been a much bigger divide. And that seems scary. And it's scary, sort of this, have you heard the word infodemic? It kind of goes along with, typically it goes along with a pandemic, but it can be applied to other things. It's an epidemic of information where you can't tell what's right and what's wrong, right? Like I can't. That's what's scary. Like so much information out there that you can't tell what's right and you can't tell what's wrong.
Mm.
And such a divide that it's hard to like sift through that information and just be good people, right? Or do what's right. So that's what's scary. Just
Okay.
so much information.
What gives you hope?
I've just seen so much progress too. And
Mhm.
this, so, I recently became a runner.
That's what I heard.
I heard that too. And I realized that I used to think that I was failing at running if I didn't feel like running was getting easier. So I'd go for my jog and somebody next to me would be running along happily. And I would think they figured it out. It's easy for them. And it never got easy for me. So I thought I must be bad at it.
Mm.
And now that I'm being a runner in training and I have a coach, I finally learned that never feeling like it's getting easier is progress. I'm a real runner. It's never going to get easier because as soon as I get better at it, I'm going to push harder.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep seeing that on lots of fronts in our community too, where it's you learn enough, you work hard, you keep trying, you practice, and it's never going to get easier. But being happy in that discomfort and continuing to push forward is progress. And I feel like I see that.
Yeah. Better is best. And progress is all we get.
Right. I mean, there's always going to be something wrong.
For sure.
We're not going to be able to undo. Should we go all the way back to who's my Gomez de Zahara, the first person to start propaganda for slavery to economize it? I mean, I'm going to go all the way back there, but we're not going to be able to get back there.
I mean, I'd like to put some hands on him, but
it's hard,
but whatever. Nah, I get what you mean. And it's one of those things where it's a lot of work, and sometimes it doesn't feel like we're getting as far as fast as we would like to. I know that's the case for me, but if people are really mission focused, or people are really about making that change, then they'll play their part in whatever part that is. And in your case, it is learning and helping to assist people tell their story so that others can learn. And so I appreciate what you do.
Well, I do it thanks to you a lot of times. I mean, really, it's people. I mean, you have to be willing to be the person that is going to let me ask the questions.
Yeah.
And also, when I am new to some things and I'm like flying off the handle, for you to just say like, hey, here's the thing.
Yeah.
You're not going to get anywhere with
Yeah.
like that. It takes somebody to do that. So it's helping my progress.
Well, we're a team, so I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this was fun.
And this cup of coffee would just be part of my 76 bean quest.
I think it should count. I think this should count for 2 beans.
All right, you heard it here.
Right. So you tell them it should count for 2 beans. Well, thank you for coming by. We appreciate it. Make sure you all like and subscribe so you can stay up with all of the different content. We got a lot more coming for you. And you can always follow us at Think3D Solutions on all the socials or letsthinkthree.com. Peace.